If you're anything like me and you grew up playing video games in the late 2000s and early 2010s, you probably have a soft spot and a lot of good memories for some of the Xbox Live Arcade games of that era. Games like Castle Crashers, Plants vs. Zombies, Trials HD, Limbo, they just evoke this certain sense of nostalgia for me and I think a lot of other people. They were very much games of their time. They're very simple yet very effective little games that were capable of keeping you entertained for a couple hours or dozens of hours depending on what you wanted to get out of it. In 2007, PopCap Games released probably what is my favorite of the games of this era, and that's a little game called Peggle. I think most gamers of that generation probably remember Peggle because it wasn't a little game at all. Although it came from humble beginnings, it grew into being a pretty popular game, having been downloaded or purchased more than 50 million times across its various releases. It spawned a few sequels, and at least at the time, it seemed like Peggle wasn't going anywhere. It seemed like this is going to be a series that we'd get entries in every couple years for a long time. However, that is not what happened. Before we talk about where Peggle's at today, I think it's pretty important to understand where Peggle came from. It released on the PC in 2007 by PopCap Games, and it's a pachinko-inspired puzzle game mixed with some skill and a little bit of randomness. Its objective is pretty simple. Within the allotted number of turns, you just strategically shoot your ball into a board of pegs and you have to clear all the orange ones. Along the way, you could aim to get free balls, different power-ups, depending on which different Peggle master you're using, and strive to reach high scores. It's the kind of game that anybody could pick up and play. It's just immediately understandable. Despite its simplicity, however, Peggle released to pretty low sales and little fanfare, and PopCap knew they needed to do something to boost those sales. And they got an idea that just ended up being their ace in the hole. You ever hear of a little game studio called Valve, developers of such iconic games like Half-Life, Left 4 Dead, Counter-Strike, Team Fortress, and Portal? I thought so. Apparently some Valve developers were pretty big Peggle fans and could often be seen playing the game in their offices. So in an effort to boost sales and brand recognition, PopCap proposed a version of Peggle that would pay tribute to some of Valve's games. Thus the first Peggle spin-off was born, Peggle Extreme. PopCap developed the game in conjunction with Valve actually providing some graphical assets and artwork. Although it eventually became a free download to anybody with a Steam account, and it still is available for free on Steam, it was originally included with Valve's The Orange Box, and it was essentially just a 10-level playable demo of Peggle Deluxe that contained different graphical themes of games that were included in the Orange Box. Although PopCap co-founder Jason Kapalka was initially a little skeptical whether or not this crossover would be successful, any doubts were quickly squashed as the Orange Box and Peggle Extreme along with it were met with critical and commercial success. All these eyes on the Orange Box led to additional eyes on the Peggle series, which boosted sales and increased the demand for a sequel and for the game to be available on more platforms. The following year, in September 2008, Peggle fans got the sequel they asked for in the form of Peggle Knights, which was essentially more levels, challenges, and a new Peggle master. It took a bit of time, but throughout 2009, the original Peggle made its way to Xbox 360 in March, iOS in May, and PlayStation 3 in November, along with some other ports. The three aforementioned ports also received Peggle Knights in the form of downloadable content or an in-app purchase in the case of the iOS. One of the more interesting Peggle ports is actually the Nintendo DS port called Peggle DualShot, and this version of the game essentially combines levels from Peggle Deluxe and Peggle Knights and mashes them together. It also has some unique gameplay mechanics. Despite being a big Peggle fan growing up, I never actually knew this version existed, and through all my game hunts and going around looking for games, I never seem to come across it in any game stores, but its price online would suggest that it's really not that rare. At this point, Peggle was doing pretty good. It was well received by critics and the general public. MSNBC called it one of the 5 most addicting computer games of all time. Interestingly enough, PopCap even funded a study at East Carolina University which concluded that people under the age of 25 that played Peggle actually experienced a 45% decrease in depression. After a few years off, and rather infamously at E3 2013,
one more thing to announce, coming this year, Peggle 2!
Peggle 2 was announced as a timed exclusive for the Xbox One, and upon release it was received pretty well. It featured a new visual style, new Peggle masters, and that same addicting Peggle gameplay that fans knew and loved. Over the following year, it would receive ports to the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 4, and it would also even receive some DLC in the form of new levels, Peggle masters, and some costumes. It did face some criticism for maybe not innovating as much as it should have, But all in all, it was a pretty solid entry that I know I was happy with, and I think a lot of Peggle fans were also pretty happy with. This is where our story begins to take a turn, however. Peggle 2, although a pretty good game, failed to take the gaming world by storm in the way that its predecessor had. This is likely due to the fact that it never received a PC port despite originating on that platform years prior. During the development of Peggle 2, PopCap was purchased by Electronic Arts and they had decided to shift the focus to console releases. After its timed exclusivity ended nearly a year after its original launch, it's fair to say that people just didn't really care anymore and the demand for a PC port just wasn't there. Not to mention, EA sorta has a reputation for kind of monetizing things to death. Although this isn't even really where Peggle was done that dirty. Things really took a turn for the worse when, in 2014, Peggle Blast was released exclusively on the Google Play and Apple App Stores. If you know anything about the culture surrounding mobile games, you may be able to tell how this story is about to go. Peggle Blast is a mobile version of Peggle with a few twists. Most levels require you to hit all 25 orange pegs to beat the level, but there are some new victory conditions, such as requiring players to hatch eggs, or clear pegs covered in mud, or perform certain style shots, or drop gems. That seems all fine and dandy, except for the fact that, like many other mobile games, it is littered with microtransactions. Peggle Blast operates on a life system. You have 5 lives, and you can play for as long as you'd like, as long as you don't run out of lives, but once you fail 5 times, you're forced to wait out the timer before they replenish. Of course, you have the option to pay for more lives if you want to keep playing right away, and the game practically begs you for money at every turn. Now you may be thinking, if you just get good at Peggle, theoretically you can just keep playing, and you definitely can do that for the first chunk of levels, but as you progress past the first few worlds, in my opinion, there's a really sharp difficulty spike, levels that are just so challenging, not because they're well designed, but because they're borderline unfair. Levels that you have to play over and over again just to develop a strategy, but you can't play enough to develop that strategy because you run out of lives. It gets to a point that when you do manage to conquer one of these levels, it feels like you did it because you got lucky, not because you actually did it with some kind of skill. The game knows this though. The game knows these levels are really hard and it constantly invites you to buy power-ups that'll make clearing pegs much easier. They knew what they were doing here. Make the first bunch of levels easy to hook players in, and then make it really hard out of nowhere to keep them playing and keep them spending money so that they can keep playing. It takes all the joy and all the magic about what made the original games great in the first place. It just makes playing this game feel icky and unfun. The game is 12 years old now and it really shows. On my iPhone, it clearly isn't optimized well for the bigger screens of modern smartphones, and the graphics and text, at least to my eyes, have this weird blur and stretched look to them. If you've ever played an old iPhone game on your modern iPhone, you probably know exactly this feel that I'm talking about. It's as if EA just doesn't care about it, and they probably don't, as at this point I doubt it's raking in that much money at all these years later. And sadly, that's where Peggle sits today. Peggle Blast was the very last release in the series that had so much promise. Greed plays a big part in this, but in fairness to the developers, in a Polygon feature done years ago about the development of Peggle 2, they said making a Peggle sequel was harder than you think because you have to make a great game while innovating and just keeping the game's secret sauce. Maybe the developers just ran out of ideas, and if that's the case, you know, maybe it's better that we didn't get so many Peggle sequels that were just lazy and didn't innovate and didn't have anything new to bring to the table. And sometimes things just run their course. However, I don't think Peggle really disappeared because people stopped liking it. No fault of its own, I think it just found itself launching in a pretty interesting kind of transitional period in gaming history. In the 2000s, a game like Peggle could just exist. There's no battle passes, microtransactions, no seasonal roadmaps, anything like that. It came at a time when smaller games could just thrive because they were fun and clever and people could have a good time playing them. As we moved into the 2010s, I don't think Peggle really fit the mold of what gaming was going to become, and it fell victim to many of these things that gamers despise. All these years later, there's no sign of Peggle returning, unfortunately, but it is still accessible. It's $5 on Steam right now, both Peggle Deluxe and Peggle Nights, and you still can play Peggle Extreme for free as long as you have a Steam account. So tell me, what do you think about Peggle? Did you grow up playing it? Is this your first time hearing about it? If that's the case, definitely go play it. I think you'll love it. But I want to hear about your Peggle memories and what you think about the franchise right now. Are you even still thinking about this game? Let me know. Thanks for watching.